Morning. Happy Friday. Today is April 16th, and I hope everybody's having a good week. I'm going to have a little mini episode here, kind of jump in and set you up for what's to come next week. I already started fabricating and video documenting of what's called the Roth Customs Reaper. Many of you are familiar with it. If not, you own one. For those who are not, that's what we're going to talk about today. Start with a little bit of history, show you a few photos. Here's a shot of Greg Roth and his good friend Mark, who sadly passed away from a tragic accident. Mark owned the steel yards that Greg worked for, and one day Greg walks in with a few drawings of frame designs and asks which one should we build. Both Mark and his son went with what we know today as the Reaper. In the early days, they weren't using a frame jig. Mark would stand over the chain stays and eyeball them while Greg tacked them in, having fun with it. Later on, Greg eventually built a frame jig, and they ran the first series of 20, what is known as the skinny tube, basically 1-inch diameter all the way through. Later did a few fat tube of 1.5-inch diameter, very few of those. 5 or 6 years later, he did a second series of, I believe, 20, and changed up the bottom tube and the chain stays to curve versus the straight position. After that run of frames, Greg chose to move on, which brings us to peak cycles and the involvement with the Reaper. There you go, in a nutshell. First 20 skinny tube Reapers, 1-inch diameter. Small handful of fat tube Reapers, 1.5 inches. There are a couple really rare Reapers out there with the compound bend chain stays, and those are still owned by the original owner in Texas. Brings us to peak cycles and absorbing the Reaper. Like, well then, how did that happen? Basically, I started fabricating just a couple years after the Reaper, and I post my stuff to social media. I didn't know Greg at the time, and he would chime in. He became a fan. Next thing you know, we got to talking. We talked behind the scenes all the time. He mentored me, taught me a lot of things, and we became friends. I'd make a point when I'd go to the shows up in Northern California, Shiny Side Up, Cycle Fest, we'd make a point of hooking up, talk more fabrication. When Greg decided to move on from the bicycle scene, he wanted to see the frame production continue even if he wasn't doing them. And so that's when he reached out to me. He didn't want to see it just fade away. And since then, to be honest with you, I haven't moved a lot. I don't know why. To me, it's possibly the legacy behind the frame. I get it. It's not a Greg Roth frame. It's being done by Peak Cycles. That's like me absorbing GCG. I can do the frames and they wouldn't be done by Todd, or they weren't done by Todd. There's history. I super get it. With that said, I have moved a few, and I'm working on one as we speak. The very first Peak Cycles Reaper just completed and debuted recently. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Belongs to Anthony out in Arizona, and he did a beautiful job on that Reaper. Wish I could show you more photos. That's all I could find. So Anthony, you got to shoot me some more pics. With that said, I am truly grateful of my time with Greg. It was a short amount of time of two people who didn't even know each other to becoming good friends to passing on a legacy. I'm truly honored. Greg, if you're watching, I hope you're doing well, my friend. That's pretty much going to wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed today's version of what's happening at Peak Cycles. And until next time, make it a killer day. No bloopers. As mentioned, this is a mini episode. I kind of burned through it, so there's really no bloopers to show you. Main purpose of the video was to give you some backstory and history of Roth Customs and the Reaper. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to throw a few trivia things out that I'm sure people don't know. Is one, yes, Greg and I did work something out on paper, so we're good to go. Secondly, I do own a Reaper myself. It's the black one with the green flames that was pictured in the video. Happens to be number 7 of the original 20 and was owned or previously owned by Mark's wife, who passed away. So I'm very fortunate to own that. Lastly, I bet not many people know this, is that Greg is actually responsible for the Peak Cycles name. And basically that was his chant on social media every time I posted something. So I was doing it part-time, I had a full-time job, and every time I posted something and Greg was liking it, he'd chanting peak cycles, peak cycles. So when I went full time, I just kind of rolled with it, and it stuck. As for the shirt, Greg did a small handful of these back in the day. And if you have one of these, surely good times.